Hello and welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence.
And I'm Nate Payne.
And today we're talking about Tales from the Darkside. Now we have, Nate has this on DVD. When do you remember seeing this show first? And when do you remember picking up the DVD set?
So I actually never really knew the show until much later. And I hadn't really watched it until I got it on DVD, which was like last year, I think. I got it at Best Buy. It was only $30, and I was like, oh, I've always heard of this show, and I knew that it had originated as a Creepshow TV series, and so I was like, I don't know why I haven't watched this. I'm going to pick it up, and then I kind of binged the whole thing, which caused me not to really remember much of it.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about this show, though. I bet you can revisit it and notice new things every time.
Absolutely, yeah, and like the 3 episodes we just watched, I remembered the most from the first one, but even that it was really nice to revisit. Yes.
Now we both have seen the movie. Do you remember when the movie came out, or do we have that?
The movie is from 1990.
Okay, so yeah, the pilot episode, which is called Trick or Treat, premiered in October of 1983, and then the next season, I mean, I guess it's the pilot and then considered the first season, didn't premiere until 1984, so at least a couple months. And then that next episode was called New Man, and then we watched also I'll Give You a Million.
Yes, and I loved all 3 of them. I was not sure what to expect, especially with the second and third one. I could remember very little. I will say the second one especially, I think, might have been my favorite. The pilot is like super Halloween-y, so I love that. But as far as like being surprised by the ending and like not knowing what was going on, the second one was really great. The New Man, I loved it.
So we're going to get into some spoilers. Trick or Treat, it has you said kind of like an Ebenezer Scrooge kind of vibe, like Christmas Carol, because he's a mean old miser and people owe him money in town, and he has this thing for Halloween night that if the kids can come trick or treating at his house and not be scared, then it'll pay off their parents' debt. And he said,
find the bundle of like receipts and things. Yeah. And they have to get through his house without being too scared, and then they get to pay off all the debts, and no one has ever done it before.
It's so mean because they're putting so much pressure on these kids and these parents. It's so sad.
Yeah, like when the dad was like, he's not going to be scared. I hit him with a switch to keep him from being afraid. And it's like, that's not how you keep a child from being afraid. Just from the point of view of a child care expert.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, that was the worst. So it was good. It was set up that this guy, you absolutely didn't like him. And all these different kids are coming through, and they're trying to not be scared. And he's got like the electronic bat. And what were some of his other tricks?
He would sit in his room he had all those like microphones, and like he would make sound effects and talk through the walls and stuff like that. It was all very, like, I don't know, even as a kid, I probably wouldn't have been that scared.
Yeah, some of it was a little, cheesy, but these poor kids. So then, of course, something real happens, and the makeup was, I just love it. I love the makeup in all 3 episodes. Well, there wasn't makeup in the second one, I guess, but it's so good. This witch, and then just this, what was it, like an icky kind of zombie guy?
Yeah, and then the devil. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that was also the 3 kids that came through in the show, that was their costumes, and then the real versions came at the end, and he was like, no more trick-or-treating, or no adults, or something. I can't quite remember, but...
Yeah, he wasn't going to give candy to adults, which, also that's the worst, because, come on. And then, so at the end, the last kid came, and the witch gave him the papers, so he was going to pay off his parents' debt. Yeah,
that was really nice of her. And the kid was not even, I mean, he was scared, but it wasn't like I would have been terrified. That lady was frightening, the 3 people. And I loved how they shot the part, because he gets dragged into hell at the end, the old man. And the way it was shot was very, like, circus-y, not realistic at all, but just the visuals have this very, like, neat quality to them. And Tom Savini did the makeup, and he's incredible.
I love it. And I love just showing the witch floating, and we just saw her feet, and everything works. Like we were talking about in the 3rd episode coming up too, just some practical effects. It's like, you don't need all the CGI. It totally worked.
Yeah, it's an era when TV and movies were very theatrical, and I really miss that, and I'm really desperately hoping that the new series on Shudder at least captures some of that, because it's one of my favorite things about the genre and that era of TV.
Now, speaking of trick-or-treating, how old were you? Do you remember, like, the first time trick-or-treating in your first Halloween costume, and then how old were you when you stopped trick-or-treating?
Okay, so I grew up in an extremely religious home. Extremely, like, really, really. But I do remember we went trick-or-treating a few times when I was really little, and my brother and I don't remember this, but we have a photo. My brother and I had our favorite stuffed animals. Mine was a bunny, and his was this puppy with a red scarf, and we went as them. So I was a bunny, and he was a puppy, and then the one I remember the most was I was Tweety Bird, and it was this big, like, flat foam costume, and my head, like, was behind it, and I just remember the, like, head of Tweety Bird being huge, and so it was like this weird, like, flat mascot foam costume, and then I always had to be like angels and stuff like that, but eventually, when my parents got divorced and we moved, my mom started letting me, like, I was a vampire one year. And Halloween was always my favorite holiday, and I don't remember exactly when I stopped, but I remember being really sad about it, because I was like, oh, this is the first year where Halloween is just really sad, and I don't really get to do anything. And so, yeah, I don't know exactly when it was, but I was probably like 9 or 10. 11, 12, I don't know, somewhere in there.
I remember, like, I grew up in the country. You lived in the country for a while too. And so we would trick or treat, but we just go to like 3 houses. Like, I went to, grandparents' houses and then my great aunt and uncle, because people just you didn't go door to door because you'd have to drive so many miles. And it wasn't until I was in 8th grade, which was my last year trick or treating, a group of friends, we went into town and went door to door, and I'm like, this existed my entire life and I didn't know.
I remember my mom took us in, like, the rich part of Duluth, and we went through, and they would give you full-size candy bars, and I got a $5 bill, and it was crazy. And I remember that year I was really mad because I was like a vampire or something. Or no, I was a Grim Reaper. And my mom made me, of course, wear my, like, big, fat, puffy jacket under my costume. And that was, like, Minnesota trick-or-treating. And did you go? How old were you? I shouldn't ask this. The 91. That was the last year you went? I remember that year we trick-or-treated in our apartment building. So we stayed in and went door to door in there. And I remember on the news this kid dressed like a dinosaur walking through the snow singing Jingle Bells.
Yes, it was epic because my friend came over after trick-or-treating and she was stuck at my house for like 3 days, and it was like the best thing ever.
Yes, we used to sled from... I shouldn't say used to. We did that year. We sled from our neighbors that lived above us. We would sled out of their patio down the hill. So, like, over our own patio was completely buried. Yeah. So.
That's crazy. I was thinking now about trick-or-treating and how, I mean, I'm sure it's the same, but I only did it 1 year in town. But we take our kids trick-or-treating, and now there's adults, especially where we go, there's adults that hand out alcoholic beverages to other adults. You haven't experienced that, I assume? That
makes me want kids. You should let me come with you.
Yes, come trick-or-treating with us. So, hey, good on you. And a couple of our friends, they experienced that for the first time last year. And I'm like, yeah, we've been getting that like 5 years in a row where they hand you a beer or like apple cider with Fireball in it. And it's like, okay, great.
Did you ever have any like sketchy experiences? Because I know like in the 80s and early 90s especially, people were always like, watch out for razor blades and needles. And I just remember that guy that handed out, it was either last year or the year before, I don't know, it was recently, where a guy was handing out candy that was individually wrapped and it was labeled with like a diabetes medicine or something. And it was like on the news, people were afraid that he was like handing out diabetes meds for people, but it just was candy with that on the label.
Oh no, I didn't hear about that. But I know like some fake articles that went around and people saying, oh, they're handing out meth that looks like cotton candy, and people are giving their edibles away.
Yeah.
And somebody like responded saying no one would give their edibles away. They're too expensive.
Right? Like, nobody's going to hand out, like, acid tabs and stuff. Like, first of all, you're going to know exactly where that came from. And then also, yeah, I imagine that it's probably too expensive. No one's going to hand out edibles.
And also, like, you're not gaining anything by getting little kids addicted to meth. They can't afford to buy it from you.
Right? It's just, like, chaotic evil.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. But Trick or Treat, I enjoyed it, the episode. The next one really surprised me. It was called The New Man. And this guy, he's at work. And then all of a sudden this kid shows up who he doesn't recognize, but he's claiming that this kid's saying, "You're my father."
Yeah, and then they go home and his wife and other son are there and they're setting up dinner, and the little boy is not there because the guy walked him to the jail to the police station, and was like, this kid is lost, and the mother gets really angry because she's like, what did you do? Why is our son Jerry at the police station? And they bring him home, and the dad has like no recollection whatsoever of having a son named Jerry, and he's accusing his wife of all these things, and she starts to freak out because she's like, oh, we've already had to move so many times and this is happening again, because I guess he was like a terrible alcoholic and had ruined their lives multiple times, and they worked really hard to get out of it, and he's like, I haven't drank in years.
The thing that you kept saying is, like, who do we feel sorry for in this situation? Because we felt sorry for everybody. And the guy, even if it was true that he was an alcoholic and he had no recollection, I mean, I still feel sorry for him because that would be totally scary. But then at the same time, even if this kid isn't your son, he thinks that you're his father, so you shouldn't be so mean to him.
Right, that was the thing. The dad, he's just constantly like, get out of here, you little shit. And that was, yeah, I felt bad. And then, like you said, the dad worked really hard to get over his alcoholism and was convinced that he had, and yet this family is accusing him of being back on the bottle, and like, you don't know what's going on at all. I was really surprised how engaged I was with this episode, constantly just like, what's gonna happen? Like, because normally in these stories there's an obvious villain who gets their comeuppance, and this one I didn't feel like there was. You didn't know who was telling the truth, who was lying, who was like just mistaken. It was crazy.
And so, spoiler alert, but the end reveal is, I mean, the guy starts drinking again, and I think he drank himself to death. But the little kid goes back into his dad's office, and now there's the next guy who's having a drink at lunch, and he calls him dad, and he has no recollection. So is he like the angel of alcoholism or something?
Yeah, I know. That was what I was thinking. The kid's like, yeah, the alcohol fairy. Except he doesn't bring you alcohol, he punishes you. And it's amazing. And it made me question like all of the interactions the guy had with his family and everything. Like, we both talked about, like, we had theorized a lot of things, but that was like the last thing that I thought of, or I didn't think of it at all. That one really shocked me.
Yeah, it was a really good twist. And, I guess we're sort of like trained now for like certain tropes or certain twists because, we've seen so many things. And this, I've never seen that angle before.
Yeah, it was definitely a surprise.
The third episode is I'll Give You $1 Million. And there's a soul exchanged for $1 million. And now I feel like, when this aired in 1984, now I feel like, what is it, Dr. Eva? Like $1 million. It doesn't seem like that much. But if we up it to $10 million, would you sell your soul?
We did have this conversation. If I was...
I don't know about selling the soul, but like, would you rob a bank?
I would not rob a bank.
We wouldn't do anything illegal, but I mean, if I won $10 million, I'd be really happy.
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't go to the depths that some people do to get money like that. But if I managed to get that much money, I would go out of my, like, I feel like coming from a place of like normal income or low, and then suddenly having that much money, I like to think that I would put a lot of it back into especially the arts community. but I wish that I could win that much money.
I know, my gosh. And that I love whenever I know that the chances are slim, but whenever the lottery is really high up there, like I go to sleep at night thinking about how would I spend like this 500 million and all the charities that I would give to. Seriously.
My husband and I sometimes talk about, like, even if we just won $1 million, what we would do. And every time we have this conversation, it becomes like it builds and builds and builds. And we get so excited as if it were really happening. And then so it's like, God, I have to stop thinking about this because you get really excited about it. Like, I know the first thing we would do definitely is just pay off the house. And then I don't know what we do with the rest. If it was just $1 million, like really, that runs out really fast. But I would want the house paid off immediately.
I know. And like we were saying, there's the meme about, some people say money doesn't solve all your problems, but there are certainly a lot of problems it would solve. So anyway, this guy sells his soul. And there's this zombie makeup, which I love. There's bits hanging off his face when this guy comes with his soul to give it to this guy. And the effect of the soul in this little glass case, kind of like the Beauty and the Beast rose case, it's brilliant.
Yeah, and all it is like dry ice with a light under it. And when he pulls it out, it's like you said, he reaches in and then you're like, the light turns off. And that is exactly what it is. Like, it's very theatrical, and I love that. I also really liked how both of the rich guys in this were like clearly these like mustache twirling like villain rich guys, which it's just when they really lean into those kinds of tropes, I think is when it works.
Yeah, no, I think it totally works. And the morals of all the stories, these bad guys are getting theirs. I mean, like we said, though, that second one, it's a little murky for me because, is alcoholism a disease, and can you choose to be an alcoholic? And I don't know. I still kind of feel bad for that guy.
Yeah, I honestly don't feel, looking at it through a 2019 lens, I think I don't consider anyone in that a villain necessarily. I mean, I guess the kid would be, but it's not your traditional like EC comic, the bad guy gets his kind of thing. It's sadder. Yeah,
it totally is. Well, do you want to rank these episodes and like which one you enjoyed the most to the least, or on a scale of some sort, or how should we talk about them?
Should we rate them by pumpkins? We carved pumpkins while we watched.
Yes, perfect. So on a scale of 0 to 10 pumpkins, how many pumpkins do you give the Trick or Treat episode?
Oh, God, I loved it so much. I'd give that one 9 pumpkins for sure.
And I think I'd give it an 8. How about the New Man episode?
I would give that one an 8, but I also loved it.
And I would give that one a 9. So we're very close. And then I'll give you a million. How many pumpkins would you give that episode?
Probably. God, I loved that episode too. I'll give it an 8.
I'm going to give that one a 7, but I'm going to give the zombie makeup a 10 because I love that zombie so much.
That's what kicks Trick or Treat up for me, is the visuals at the end with the makeup.
Well, I would recommend, I don't think this is streaming anywhere, is it?
If it is, I'm thinking of Monsters. It's probably on like Amazon, but probably not. You probably have to buy it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like I keep seeing film Twitter talking about how people, and I'm guilty of this, got rid of, VHS and some DVD collections because it's like, oh, we can just stream it, but things are not as readily available as we maybe imagine they would be, like 10 years ago, because you can't find some stuff. You can't even rent some stuff.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like it's pretty rare not to be able to find something at all. I will say though, this DVD set, I've seen it like recently at Best Buy. It's $30 for all I think it's 3 seasons, and it's every episode, and it's so worth it.
Yeah.
$30 for that much entertainment.
So something that I haven't been able to find streaming, and I feel like I'm losing my mind. I know I'm not, like the guy in the second episode of Tales from the Darkside. Do you remember the movie Cemetery Man?
Yes, I love that movie.
Do you own it?
No, I don't, but I watched it with my friend Christina on something kind of recently.
I could not find it. So, okay, he's looking it up because I was saying I feel like I'm losing my mind because nobody that I talk to even knows that movie. And I love that movie and I want to rewatch it. And can we do an episode on it, please?
if I can find it. I think it goes by a different title.
I just loved how he was styled, and I can't remember everything because I used to have it on VHS, and then I'm like, oh, I'll just get it on DVD when it comes out or whatever, and it never did. And now I can't find it.
This is crazy because I swear I, within the last few years, watched this with a really close friend of mine who I watched this kind of stuff on. And I can't find it. What the heck?
I know. I don't know. But I swear it exists. And so if and when we find it, we will definitely talk about it because it's been a while since I've seen it.
It's not streaming on anything anymore. But I swear to you, I watched it. It's a Swabby movie, which is awesome too. First of all, I didn't realize it was from 1994. I thought it was older.
Anything else you want to say or recommend that you've watched lately?
Well, first of all, of course, tonight at 8 p.m., which will not be when this is published, but the Creep Show on Shudder. Super pumped about. Also found out that they are making a Funko Pop, so it sounds like they're really expecting this to do well. I'm hoping that it picks up, but I'm also hoping that it doesn't cause Shudder to skyrocket in price or something.
Oh yeah, that's true. Or shut down when they had the drive-in, and it just it crashed for everybody.
Oh yes. Did you watch any of that?
I didn't.
I don't like him.
Neither do I. So okay, we have that in common.
Yeah, he in the first episode talked a lot about PC culture, and I'm like, oh, it's another freaking one of these people that doesn't understand what empathy is.
Yeah, it just feels kind of old school and nostalgic and not in necessarily a good way.
Right. He's old timey. I mean, I get why some people like him, but just not a fan.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fair. And also this will air after many more episodes are out, but I've watched the first 2 episodes of American Horror Story 1984, and so far I'm enjoying it.
Yes, I've only watched the first episode, and I don't know. You know how I feel about American Horror Story. I feel like the seasons always start out fairly strong and then fall apart about halfway through the season. I'm really hoping that doesn't happen with this, though, because I loved the first episode so much.
Yes, I think it's set the perfect tone, and like I said, after I watched Assassination of Gianni Versace, I really believe in Ryan Murphy as a showrunner, so I'm really hoping for good things.
Yeah, me too. And honestly, as much as I do like her, I'm so glad Sarah Paulson isn't in this.
Yeah, because I think it's good to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, there's only so much freaking out and screaming you can watch somebody do before you're like, okay, can we get somebody else to freak out and scream?
Yes, true. So let us know what you recommend horror-wise, and until next time, we'll see you in the horror section.
Thank you.